This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk about one thing that really affects your pool service business, and that is when a customer cancels. I'll go over some reasons why they may cancel, and I'll give you some retention tips that will hopefully help you in customer retention and preventing those costly cancellations of service. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. I was at one of my service accounts, and a neighbor came out and approached me and wanted me to take a look at their pool. They said that their pool service company recently sold the route, and the person that took over they thought wasn't doing a very good job. And I asked them, when did they take over? They said like 3 months ago. So I went over and looked at the pool, and I was pretty shocked that they continued service 3 months in with the new company. The pool just was completely covered with mustard algae. The cleaner wasn't working properly, and it was a total mess. But they, of course, didn't cancel service. I had another one also where I was doing a bid on the pool, and they were still actually paying the service provider, but they said he hadn't shown up for about a month. And I was kind of scratching my head, after about a week or two, you notice they don't show up, you probably want to call them or contact them. And it's one of those things where people just don't really look back there or pay too much attention to their pool unless there's like an emergency or if they're going to have a party and they notice that there's algae in there. So that's one thing that I noticed, is that it's really not something that is a hair trigger kind of thing. You have a grace period before the customer cancels usually, and you can correct the problems, and you should correct those problems if you discover them and the customer's not happy with service. So that's the good thing about pool service, is that it's not usually instantaneous when the customer walks back there, sees algae, and then cancels service. They give you a chance to recover it. They have to get new bids anyway, and it's not like they can just get new service. Sometimes they'll get a flyer or a door hanger that's offering lower service or cheaper service, and that may tempt them to switch if the pool is not being maintained properly. But if you're maintaining the pool correctly and there's no reason for them to switch, they'll probably just toss that away. I do that with all my vendors as well. When I have pest control and things like that, when I get something that's a really low rate, I don't pay too much attention if they're doing their job properly. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because if you're trying to get new accounts, then the customer has a high tolerance for pain and for bad service, and it's sometimes harder to capture those customers because of that fact. So I think it works both ways. If you have the customer, there's a good chance you're going to retain them. Even if your employee drops the ball and makes a mistake and the pool doesn't look that great, they usually don't cancel again. And so on the other side of that coin, it's a little bit harder to get service accounts because people have a high tolerance for bad service. Now, one thing that could cost you the account with really nothing regarding service goes is if the customer sells their house and you can't make contact with the new owner or buyer. There's different ways to make contact and to keep in communication. One, of course, is to call the customer that's selling the house when they open escrow and give them a packet to give to the new buyer. Usually they'll leave that with the buyer, or the agent, and they'll give it to the other agent. It's kind of convoluted because the seller of the house doesn't necessarily have direct contact with the buyer of the house. It's through an agent. So depending on how the agency is, you'll give the information to the seller, and they should pass it on to the realtor. If at all else fails, just tell the seller to leave it on the kitchen counter or island so that you can capture or have a better chance of capturing the buyer of the house. You can also leave a sticker or some information out by the timer. I've captured accounts that way as well, or recaptured the service account, I should say. When the new owner goes out to the pool, he'll see the information on the pool equipment, and he's likely to call you. Sometimes the realtor will give them a list of all the vendors, the landscaper, pool service, pest control, whatever, window cleaner, all of those will be handed to the buyer. But you can't really count on that. You can't count on information being passed on. So it's really smart to be proactive when you see a for sale sign go into your customer's home, and especially when you see the in escrow little tag that goes up there, and just stay in constant communication with the seller so that you can try to recapture the buyer of the property. I don't really have to go into great detail of what happens when you get a canceled customer. It does feel really bad when someone cancels, of course, because you're not expecting it, and the loss of revenue can be significant. If you're charging $180 a month and you lose that customer, you just lost $2,160 for that, and for the year to date to the next year in income. It's also frustrating, and you've also created a gap in your route, so there may be, some more driving time in between stops, or you may have some time that you don't really want to have on your route when you lose it. Now, when you lose more than one customer in the month, you should maybe sit down and analyze what's going on. Maybe there's a competitor moving into your market that's really offering discounted prices, that's taking accounts. It may be that it's just one of those coincidences where customers are struggling financially and they decide to cut the pool service at the same time. That does happen. And usually you won't lose more than one customer per billing cycle. Sometimes depending on how big you are, if you're really big, you may lose more than one. I have a friend here who has 21 trucks, and his business is so gigantic that he has a hard time tracking when he loses customers. It's one of those things where if you get that big where you don't even know which customers you've lost, and if you're servicing pools that aren't even paying you anymore, that's something that you have to really, of course, sit down and analyze. And we all hope to get that big, I guess, sometimes where you're so big that losing customers is not a big deal and you're not even paying attention to it. But for the average pool company, when you lose a customer, it is painful and it does hurt, especially if they're a good customer. So really keep an eye out for any kind of trends or patterns that may be happening in your area where you're starting to lose a lot of customers. That really is going to affect your business tremendously. And it's not something that happens often, but there are those periods of times where you may lose several customers at one time, which makes this even more painful. If you remember, the Skimmer had a industry survey, and one of the questions, or one of the things or misconceptions, is that we think customers leave because of a high price of pool service, and that's really not the case. According to that survey, a lot of times the customers would leave because of other factors: poor communication, poor service, not being satisfied with how the pool looks. And it's really not the price point per se where the customer cancels. People have a pretty high tolerance for price increases if the service you're providing is excellent. I'll give you a good example. I've had the same farmer's insurance agent probably for the last 15 years, and every year my insurance goes up, and sometimes I call him and I'm not arguing about the price or complaining too much about it, but I do want explanations of why this is much more than last year, and he'll explain it to me. Now, I've actually gotten other quotes from other companies just because, at one point I was like, I wonder if I can move everything to someone else. And it did come in like slightly lower, but since I have this long relationship with him for a very long time, I didn't go to a new agent for that reason. And that's kind of how it is with pool service. If you had a customer, since 2005 and you were paying $90 a month, it's crazy, but the rates have increased dramatically over the years. And then you raise it to 110 and then 130, 150. Now everything's going up around the customer as well. It's not like just the pool service is rising. The cost of, again, insurance is rising. The cost of, if he buys a new car, that's going to cost him a lot more than the new car he bought 6 years ago. Food, of course, everything is rising at the same time. Gas prices, we're at $6.40 a gallon right now here. It's one of those things where everything is rising in conjunction with each other. And so the pool service is not going to stand out. And if you're at, 180 or 190 right now and go to 200, it's going to be acceptable to most people that these rising prices are part of the norm, and they're not going to cancel service and look for someone that's charging 150. In most cases, they're going to stick with you because of that long-term relationship. So keep that in mind, that it's really not the price that causes the customer to drop the service account. There are other factors in the background. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. Now, do you ever work with customers that may be going through something and they send you a message saying that at the end of the month they're going to have to cancel service? I usually ask, the reason for cancellation. And sometimes they'll say, well, I got my hours cut at work, so I'm not making as much money. And unfortunately, I have to cut my services back, or all the things I'm doing here. Or it could be the fact that they want to try to do it themselves, and that's fine. You can, let them try to do the pool, and they may call you back eventually if they're running into trouble. I have a friend that bought a house in the high desert here, and he had pool service prior. The owner had pool service, and they put him in contact with the pool service. He's like, I'm not going to pay this kind of money for pool service. I'm going to do it myself. And he figured he could do it. He bought the house, I think, in March or something, or February. And by June, it was 120 degrees out, which is typical of that area. And the pool was starting to turn. And he was like, I can see why the previous owner had pool service. It's really hot out there. I can't handle this thing. And he ended up calling the pool guy back and getting service back. So if a customer leaves, chances are they're going to call you back eventually if they can't handle the pool and handle the situation. If they're leaving because of a monetary thing, I don't really cut my rate down, but I will offer them sometimes a tiered service to a lower service. So, if they want, I can do chemical only and skimming and netting, or just chemical only to their pool until they get back on their feet. Offer them a lower tiered service if that is something that you want to do to try to retain the customer. But you can't necessarily discount the service rate on that customer, because then you don't really make the profit on that pool, and it's better off not having it and getting another pool to fill that slot. But finding out the reason why they're canceling is really important. If it's something regarding the service, let's say this happened to me before, where they cancel service, and then I asked him, what's the reason? And they said, well, we wanted pool service on Thursday and you're coming on a Tuesday. That's pretty easy to rectify, and it's something that they could have communicated to me, but they didn't. They just canceled service and found another pool company that would come on Thursday. Those little things do happen. So finding out the reason for canceling can actually save the account in some cases. I don't really think it's wise just to let the customer, drop and not find out, not analyze it or ask him why they're canceling. And sometimes they don't even give you a reason. They just say, I want to cancel service. You contact them. They just tell you, I just don't want service anymore. And you're blind at that point, but you know that, you've lost that account basically. You can't analyze it too much. If you can do things that I think that prevent cancellation, these are the key things that will save accounts in most cases, or keep people from thinking about canceling. Constant communication is one thing that I think the pool routing apps really help you with, like Skimmer. These will give notifications to the customer when you service the account. If there's anything that needs to be done, you can have really instant communication with the customer. And these are important factors in retaining the account. I think if you keep the communication open, the customer will have a stronger bond with your company and will be less likely to cancel for small reasons or problems, and they'll hang in there with you, and you have more brownie points if the communication is wide open all the time. Being consistent with the service date and time is also a huge factor in retaining the customer. If they know you're going to be there Thursday at 9 to 9:30 a.m. every week, they'll look out for you sometimes, and they'll notice that you're coming consistently every week at that time. Now, of course, there'll be some fluctuations when you're doing the filter cleaning, or if something comes up and you have to push it back further. But if you can be as consistent as possible with the day and time of service, that goes a very long way in that relationship with the customer, that you're a consistent company, always coming on time, roughly every week at the same time to do their pool. And that's a great relationship builder, and I wouldn't ignore the fact that you have to be as consistent as possible in your service. You can't have someone on Thursday, then move them to Wednesday and Tuesday and just do it all different times. You really have to stay consistent so that they see the service and see the fact that you are a weekly pool service that comes at that time and day most of the time. Another thing that really helps is to be completely transparent and open with the customer when there's a problem, when something goes wrong, when you make a mistake, and when you have to raise prices. Explain to them the reasons for the price increase and why you're raising prices on your route and what it means to your business and why you have to raise the price. All these things are really important for customer retention. I wouldn't send out a price increase without a detailed explanation of why the price is going up. Very easy to do in California here when gas is $6.50 a gallon. Customers are paying the same thing and they know that everything's going to go up. They're just waiting for that to happen. It is something that is necessary. And of course, the last thing that's going to prevent cancellation, this will also help you if they sell their home to connect with a new buyer. And that is providing really excellent pool service. Their pool looks great every week. They have no problems. There's no algae in the pool. And the pool is swim ready and they have no issues at all. Very easy to do if you really dial in your pool route and you maintain those pools to where they just look so good. I have a pool here that there was a spa repairman that came over and they wanted me to unlock the gate and leave it open for the guy. So I actually ran into him as he was in the backyard and he was like, "Man, this pool looks great. You're doing a great job." Now, if vendors notice how good the pool is, the customer certainly does as well. And it's one of those things where if you can maintain that great level of service without deviating, sure, you're going to have a speed bump here and there. If that pool looks great every week, week in and week out, the chances of that customer canceling are very slim to none at that point. And I did start off saying how much tolerance the customer has for bad service. So if you provide great and excellent service, you're probably not going to have very many customers cancel on your pool route, and you're going to have a really high retention rate of those customers. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those by going to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a drop-down menu with over 1,900 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.